What's a real life glitch you've experienced that you still can't explain? I bit a banana once and the apple biting sound file played instead. It seems like soon after I learn a new word or idea, it pops up somewhere in everyday life. But I don't remember ever noticing it before. Dreamt I was on a train which crashed. The guy in front of me was decapitated. The train car caught on fire before plunging off a bridge into water. I drowned. Woke up in a panic. Realized I wasn't dead and fell back asleep. Had the exact same dream. And again. And again. Next day. Dragging my tired butt into work wondering why my mind decided to play a dream like a bad VCR. I passed the volunteer desk at work with its daily pile of newspapers. The evening before a train had crashed before plunging off a bridge into a river. Later it came out the crash produced some horrific injuries including decapitation. This is a repost, then again. It fits. Close bracket. I'm not the kind of person to have a great many friends, but those friends I do keep are sacred to me. So one evening I was getting out of a Rotterdam subway, dark, to go to my apartment near there. When I see an old friend, one I haven't seen in the flesh in a few years heading into the subway. I call out his name. He turns, waves and makes this call me gesture, then the doors close and the subway rides off. 30 seconds later, my phone rings. It was my friend, who told me he'd just seen me get in the normal train he'd used to get home from the bar, apparently. I had grinned, waved, gestured call me, comma. The door shut and the train drove off. I lived in Rotterdam. He lived in Enschede. That's just over 200 kilometers apart. Or about 125 miles. A classic summer thunderstorm was fast approaching. It was super windy out but not yet raining. I've always been fascinated by weather. So I went outside and sat in a lawn chair. I was sitting in the middle of my yard. A good 10 feet from anything when I was pelted in the face with a crouton. It was gusty. But not at the moment I was struck. I took it inside to show my family and no one cared. I never came up with a reasonable explanation. When I was about 6 or 7, my cat died. It was the first time I experienced death and it really shook me up. Then, about a month later, I saw my cat walk into my room clear as day. I wasn't freaked out and I didn't question it. I reached down to pet him and suddenly he was gone. This happened a few more times until we got 2 new cats. Each time it happened, the fact he was dead never crossed my mind. So a long time ago I was fed up with life and stepped off a curb in front of a dump truck. Turned, looked at the grill of the truck, closed my eyes, opened them to the truck passing me by and me back up on the curb. Still don't understand it and I don't know if I want to. As a kid, shot a rubber band off my fingers at a soccer goal. Rubber band, unbroken, was looped around one of the strings of the soccer goal. Absolutely no clue how that happened. I put my untangled earphones in my pocket and when I took them out again, they were untangled. It was unexplained for a little bit, but it was freaky and as far as I know, an actual glitch. I was driving home from, I think, the bookstore and suddenly realized the street signs were missing letters. Like a stop sign would read STP. Then other things I saw began missing parts. But without any space for the missing stuff to be in. Like if reality was a piece of paper that was being folded to hide things. I managed to drive home like this, barely keeping myself from freaking out. Got home and things got back to normal. Then the worst headache of my entire life hit me. Yep. My first migraine ever, of luckily only 2 so far. With years apart. I'd heard people talk about migraine symptoms. Like colors and blinking lights and smudges that impair your vision a little. Stuff like that. Nobody had ever mentioned a symptom could be reality freaking warping around you. Girlfriend and I were talking on her front lawn. Mid-sentence, I felt something evil to my left. I stopped talking and turned. She did too. Saw some sort of shadowy humanoid around 30 feet away. Light was enough that it was obviously not a person. She asked, "Do you see that?" She didn't know why I stopped talking. I nodded. Without another word we both ran inside. No idea what it was. I would call it a trick of the light. But it was out of my vision when I originally got that feeling. My friend and I were once outside when he was changing his girlfriend's car battery. It was at night and there was a lot of fog out. Suddenly, there was a flash of white lights in his neighborhood for like half a second. It couldn't have come from a porch light or something. Everything was engulfed by the light. We looked around and didn't see anything that could have caused it. There were no cars. None of his neighbors had turned on any lights. Nothing. To this day, we still believe a Terminator was sent back in time to his neighborhood. One morning I woke up, rolled out of bed, brushed, had breakfast as usual, and then went about my day off. I lounged around the house a little bit, played my DS for a bit, clinked away on my guitar. A lazy morning. Suddenly I'm driving in my car a couple towns over on my way to the B&M. I pulled over and tried to collect my thoughts. I remembered waking up and getting ready, watering plants, cleaning my stuff up in the living room, then hopping in my car. But I also remember doing all of the stuff from that other version of that morning. So I had two separate days that suddenly merged into one and kept both memories. My brother got shot in the stomach and the bullet bounced off and fell on the ground. Apparently it had traveled a long distance and lost a lot of velocity. It left a welt. But that was it. Well, I've posted this before but I'll post it again. Basically, it felt like I stepped back in time. I was walking on the sidewalk along a busy road when suddenly with a step, the whole damn world changed around me. It was a crazy hot day but suddenly it was cool and cloudy. There were only a few cars on the road and lots of people riding bicycles. I remember seeing a girl in a blue dress out of the corner of my eye. It was so surreal. But with the next step I was back in the usual reality and to this day I have no idea what happened. I once woke up sitting on top of football goalposts, no clue how I got there. It was about 6 AM and there was a girl running around the track that surrounded the football field. Always wondered what she thought I was doing up there. Must have been weird creepy for her but she clearly was confident enough to continue her run. Woke up one day and started randomly having panic attacks after 30 plus years of healthy, normal living. Once when running a rude neighborhood I'd run 100 times I went across a street and suddenly lost all sense of direction. I slowly stopped and tried to orient myself with street signs and landmarks. But nothing made sense. I know, it sounds like dementia. But I was only in my 30s and had never experienced it before or since. It was as if the Matrix reloaded and I was pointed in a different direction than before the reload. But my body still remembered the direction I was going. Back when I was sharing a shitty flat with my best mate we scraped together enough poo change for a 6-pack. In the morning I came out and there were 6 empties on the coffee table and 1 mystery beer still in the fridge. It was our magic beer. But one day I forgot it was magic and drank it. The end. One time during a run I had an out-of-body experience. I was just running along. And then I blinked and I was seeing everything as if I was standing over my own shoulder. I could see the back of my head. And all around me but my head wasn't moving. It was just super weird. When I was about 13-14, I went on a trip to another state with my church youth group. We drove through the country for hours in a region I had never been to before. Eventually we ended up in a small town. I was looking out the window and realized I knew this town as if I had lived there before. Like, I knew the post office would be a few blocks ahead on the right. And then, sure enough, there it was. Weirder. I knew what the buildings would look like. I predicted the location of all the landmarks in the town before we were close enough to see them. And all of the predictions were correct. It was very spooky and got the other kids on the bus a little riled up. Years ago I was driving home late from work and as I was waiting at an intersection my whole car jerked violently to the right. It actually lifted off the ground and sent my drink flying. I looked up and saw the light was green, so I restarted the car, manual transmission. It stalled and started to go through and pull over to check for damage. At that moment a drunk woman in an SUV ran the red light and smashed into a power transformer. If whatever happened to me hadn't, I would have been T-boned on my driver door. I called 911 and stayed to give my statement. But I think the woman died as the ambulance did not have sirens on when it left. I once bought 3 rotisserie chickens on clearance. $2 each. I picked at one of them on the drive home. Get home. Lock my car, for once. I rarely lock it. I have 2 chickens with me. And a pizza. And I was too lazy to grab the 3rd chicken. It was like 10 outside. I wasn't worried about spoilage. Figured I'd grab it in the morning. I know for sure I left the chicken on the floor of my car in front of the passenger's seat. Yet the next morning, it was gone. Vanished. No sign of it anywhere. Where did my chicken go? I drove nearly 14 miles on autopilot. Like cross-eyed zoned the F out in thought and didn't once veer off the road. Also, a friend of mine managed to phase through a locked door and had to knock on it till his dad woke up and let him in. It was a sliding door with a trigger latch, no way to lock it and go outside. I had left my cell phone, this was 2006, so it was an LG flip phone, on the charger when I went to work. After an 8-hour shift I got home and grabbed it. There was a voicemail from an unknown number. I listened to it and it was a man saying he had just received a call from my number and wanted to make sure it wasn't someone he knew that needed something. I checked the call log and sure enough at 2 PM. About 3 hours before I was home. My phone called a number. I called him back and asked if someone said anything. At this point I was convinced someone broke in. He said he could hear someone talking in the background but it wasn't something he could understand. That's why he called back. I never figured out if it was a polite intruder using my phone without stealing anything or something more spiritual. I'm not a believer in ghosts, but quite a few unexplainable things happened in that house. When I was young I was lying on my bed in the dark when I heard my cat meowing at the door. This was not unusual, as she often wanted in to sleep with me. I opened the door and saw the shadow of my cat enter the room. Then she just stood by the door, still meowing. This was not usual. I reached out to scoop her up and just hit wall. My cat was outside the whole time. I don't believe in ghosts and I definitely wasn't asleep. So I don't know what the hell happened. That was the only time I experienced anything like that. A friend of mine that I hadn't spoken to in a while, and I booked the exact same resort at the exact same time on the other side of the world, Florida, without even knowing the other one was planning to go on a trip. I traveled back to my hometown to visit relatives. On second day back, I went to bed, blinked, and suddenly it was daylight. Apparently I had slept an entire 36 hours. But my relatives remembered me doing various activities, washing dishes, eating dinner, shopping, etc. Though nobody actually saw me around. I had a dream where I was watching my brother play video games and saw him parachute out of a jet in BF4 then smack into a wall and die on impact. The next night my brother was playing BF4, jumped out of the jet, pulled his parachute, hit the wall and died. Except before he pulled his parachute I instinctively blurted out that the wall was going to kill him seconds before he came close to the ground. He still brings up that weird circumstance. I was meeting someone at the train station from Craigslist to buy my old phone for $200. He let me know when he was going to arrive and what he would be wearing. I got there, saw a guy that matched the description and showed him the phone. He took a look, gave me $200 and went on his way. As I started walking back home, I got a phone call from the original buyer telling me he just got to the train station and was looking for me. I had no idea what to say. Who the F did I sell my phone to?